This is a story without a heroine or a hero, and yet each character is cast in a leading role. A strange story, strange for our times, because we have begun to despair and lose faith in our leaders. This is a true story of millions of young people, women and men, who rose above themselves and gave their time and energy, not for money or fame, but for a dream. The dream of making India totally literate. This is the story of the Volunteers for Literacy and of the making of a movement. The story of Bharat Gyan Vigyan Samiti, the BGVS. The events that led to the formation of the BGVS began to unfold in Kerala in the 1980s. The Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, that is the KSSP, an organization of writers, scientists, theatre workers, environmentalists and others, initiated a campaign to take science to the people through Kala Jathas. The response of the people was electrifying. Hundreds of thousands participated. People came to learn science and to teach. The experiment of the Jathas was expanded to Andhra and Orissa, and later to the rest of the country through 5 Science Kala Jathas called Bharat Jan Vigyan Jathas, BJVJ, that covered almost the entire country beginning October 87. The All India People's Science Movement was born out of this churning. These Jathas carried the message of science through songs, street plays, slideshows, exhibitions, etc. to the people. The success of these forms of communication led the organizers of the BJVJ to start thinking of using this model to attack illiteracy. It was decided to test this method to build an environment in favor of literacy and then to sustain it through a campaign run by volunteers. The success of the work done by KSSP and the AIPSN had already begun to shake things up in faraway Delhi. India was committed to total literacy. One of the 5 technology missions set up by Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi was to coordinate work in this area. And yet, experience showed that the adult literacy programs being run for several decades had failed to deliver the goods. They were on the lookout for a new approach. Reports of the success of the BJVJ Science Jathas and the news of the preparations for the Ernakulam Total Literacy Campaign came as godsend. Things began to move rapidly, and KSSP was approached to join the brainstorming sessions at Delhi. May 1988 saw the formation of the National Literacy Mission. Around the same time, KSSP launched the Total Literacy Campaign in Ernakulam district of Kerala. Several modes of communication were discussed, and finally it was decided that 400 Jathas of artists, educators and organizers would crisscross the nation, visiting 60,000 villages with the message of literacy, using essentially the same forms of communication that were evolved by the BJVJ. It was decided that the responsibility for coordinating this mammoth exercise to propagate the idea of literacy, to build an environment favorable for literacy, and to create a groundswell in favor of learning would be shouldered by a new organization. The name Bharat Jan Vigyan Samiti was considered, but it was Bharat Gyan Vigyan Samiti, BGVS, that was finally chosen. From Vigyan to Gyan Vigyan. From science to knowledge with science. On December 22, 1989, BGVS was formed with Dr. Malcolm Adisheshaya as chairperson and Dr. MP Parmeshwaran as secretary. The die was now cast. The formation of the BGVS, the campaigns that it initiated, and the forces it unleashed were to leave a profound impact on the people it touched. Hundreds of cultural squads fanned out across the country, in coal mines and rice fields, in remote inaccessible areas, in the Sundarbans, in Bastar, in Dangs, in Kinnaur and everywhere else. And all of this within 8 months of the formation of the BGVS. By October-November 1990, large parts of the countryside were reverberating with the songs of literacy. The campaign to make all of Kerala totally literate was planned and launched in March 1990. Total literacy campaigns, TLCs, were also launched almost simultaneously in Pondicherry, in Bijapur and Dakshin Kannada districts of Karnataka, in Durg, Madhya Pradesh and at Midnapur in West Bengal. Literacy was now firmly established on the national agenda. The BGVS began to acquire a new profile. It was no longer confining itself to creating a demand for literacy. It also began to nurture and put in place mechanisms that would service this growing demand. People began to look up to BGVS as an agency that would develop environment building materials, train master trainers and volunteers, and invest the literacy campaign with content and purpose. The literacy movement now began to address itself to questions of caste, community, and gender discriminations, for these biases denied access to education to large sections of our population. The credo of BGVS, and by extension the literacy campaign, expanded to include issues of defending secular democracy, equality, and justice. Literacy now began to assume the shape of a movement for empowering the deprived. The literacy movement and BGVS as its prime mover developed new strategies to intervene on behalf of its constituency, the illiterate, the deprived and the dispossessed. The Stone Crushers Cooperative and the bicycle jathas of women volunteers of Pudukottai came out of literacy. Mahila Samakhya, with tens of thousands of active members, emerged out of the literacy movements to fight for women's rights. Over the years, tens of thousands of unlettered adults discovered the power of the written word and came into their own to become elected members of the panchayats. They learnt how to form cooperatives and also about the dangers of globalization and the implications of GATT. During the 10 years of its growth, 1990 to the year 2000, the campaign spread to 400 districts. The campaign mobilized over 100 million learners and over 10 million volunteers. Over 2/3 of both were women. It became not only one of the largest literacy campaigns in the world, but also a great organizer, liberator, and educator. The tasks that the campaign had set for itself have yet to be realized fully. After 6 years, we again have an opportunity to restart the second struggle for freedom. During these 6 years, obscurantist and communal forces controlled the nation, attempting to snuff out institutions espousing democracy, secularism, and liberation. But BGVS could not be crushed because it is rooted amongst ordinary people. In September 2003, without any institutionalized financial support, it organized 60 Kala Jathas for peace, unity, and sovereignty against religious hatred and neoliberal economic onslaughts. Who knows how much this Jatha added to the ferment that made the recent political change happen? Now that the change has actually taken place, the challenge is to translate it into constructive nation building. It is time again to rekindle the flame. Time to set off on the long journey again. Time to fulfill the promises we made to ourselves. Time again to march to a better tomorrow.